stand and speak and vote your conscience, vote for candidates up and down the ticket who you trust to defend our freedom and to be faithful to the Constitution.
Senator Cruz, yes or no, you will support Donald Trump if he's the nominee?
Yes, because I gave my word that I would.
That pledge was not a blanket commitment that if you go and slander and attack Heidi, that I'm going to nonetheless come like a servile puppy dog and say thank you very much for maligning my wife and maligning my father.
Ted Cruz got a really warm welcome when he walked in because I think people assumed that he would do the right thing. He would be the better man, join sides and fight Hillary Clinton, but he chose not to, and the crowd turned on him pretty quickly.
Well, back with the panel, Ted Cruz was the talk of today. Some people were saying they were very upset about it, really a lot of them. Others were saying, well, it was just like 1976 because Reagan did not endorse Ford back then. Well, here's the end of that speech.
We must go forth from here united, determined that what a great general said a few years ago is true. There is no substitute for victory.
Britt?
Well, when Ronald Reagan said that, he wasn't talking about victory for Jimmy Carter. So while it is technically true that he did not use the word endorse to Gerald Ford, he was standing there with him. They did the whole thing together. The choreography was all just what you'd want. It was, in effect, an endorsement, no question about it. It was nothing like a guy on a stage with the nominee nowhere around making a speech about his principles and what he believed to be the principles of the party. And make no mistake about this, Brett. Ted Cruz is about one thing and one thing only: becoming president of the United States. And everything he does can be looked at in that vein. He arrived in the Senate a man with glittering insider credentials and set about the task of trying to make himself appear an outsider. And he did that by not being a team player. He sought no achievement in the Senate, really. He sought to create an image of an outsider and get as much attention for that as he could. And he did it. He had the right insight about this race, which was people are looking for an outsider. Unfortunately, he got upstaged by a real outsider. But remember what he did at the beginning of the campaign. He praised Donald Trump. He thought, I like Donald Trump. I think he's a breath of fresh air and all that, because he thought Trump would fade and he could pick up his constituents. Well, Trump didn't fade, so he turned on him eventually, and his state turned on him since. And when he is suggesting there that the reason he didn't keep his word about the pledge was because he'd insulted, look, Ted Cruz has the guts of a burglar, and he's a very, very tough guy. And if he had thought it was in his interest to keep the pledge, he wouldn't have cared about the insults to his wife. He knows politics ain't beanbag.
All right.
He did what he thought he ought to do to further his own presidential prospects.
Tucker.
The guts of a burglar.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely right.
Great to have Britt here.
It is the best. There are, I think, principled reasons to oppose Donald Trump. It's very hard to give Ted Cruz the benefit of the doubt that he's acting out of those principles. He's given a couple different explanations for why he did this, because I'm a true conservative and he's not, and then he says because of personal pique. Here are the two things I noticed about the criticism of Ted Cruz, and it's been intense today. One, it comes from people who know him very well, his colleagues in the Senate, people who actually have a basis for evaluating him.
Senator Jeff Sessions.
That's exactly right. It's been very intense. And the second is very personal. They don't like him as a man. I guess the takeaway for me is one of sadness. I think Ted Cruz would be a fantastic Supreme Court justice. He is a sincere constitutionalist. He's a very smart and capable person. He will not serve in that position, or I think any higher position after this.
Mara.
What I think is so interesting, as Britt said, he saw it in his interest. I think it's a huge gamble. It's not clear to me that it's in his interest.
Yeah, but he thought it was a smart gamble.
Well, yes, a smart gamble. But Ted Cruz either delivered the longest suicide letter in history, or he set himself up for 2020 when he assumes Donald Trump will fail miserably and he'll be able to pick up the pieces. But that is very, very unclear.
Yeah. All right, Charles, but what about the people who say, listen, this is about the convention, controlling the convention, and how does the Trump campaign get him to the podium? Not mentioning the fact that if Ted Cruz was really principled, he'd stay outside the convention. Why did he go? But why did they let him?
Look, I think when Trump says he read the speech 2 hours earlier and he saw what was in it, there was no way he could then shut him down and deny him the podium, because that would have looked like, he's shutting off his opponent. People wouldn't have known why. I thought the fact that he let Cruz go up there and do this, get booed off the stage, showed a certain magnanimity and largeness on the part of Trump. So I think he made the right decision when he realized what was going to happen and let him go up at the last minute. I think the speech in and of itself, if you were to read it without knowing who gave it or where, you would say it was a pretty good presentation of the conservative case for staying out or not supporting. The problem was the venue and the person. You can make that speech at a think tank out of town, but you don't do it at a celebration for the man you are about to rebuke. That's just bad manners. You don't go to somebody's house and insult him. And this is Trump's house. He won the nomination. And the problem is the man, as everybody here has commented. It's hard to credit this as an act of principle when he spends 6 months being obsequious in honoring Trump. And also, I thought he let the cat out of the bag when this morning he said it's because of Heidi and my dad and the insult. Well, that blows away the argument that he was acting on high principle. It's okay to defend your wife, but if that's the reason, you've undermined your own case for high-mindedness.
You know, he said in his comments this morning that, you know, this isn't just a team sport. If you've watched Ted Cruz in action over the past several years, you know that as far as he's concerned, it's not a team sport at all. And he has been out for number one, trying, and his ambition to be president of the United States, all you got to do is know that that's what he's doing, and you'll never have any problem understanding what he does.
And Mara, he continued it today with his talk at the Texas delegation, so it kind of kept on rolling.
Kept on going, totally unapologetic. This is someone who has never had any hesitation about sticking the finger in his eye of his colleagues or courting their contempt. Look, he knew what was going to happen. He stood there, he said, some made a joke about the New York delegation. He knew what he was doing.
Final word. He's in for 2020.
I think those ambitions have
either way, President Trump or not.
President Trump. No, I don't actually think he's wrecked his presidential ambitions.